like to introduce you to Mr. Shaq Hills.
Thank you. Oh, thank you, Laura. I'm going to just set this down if I can. Well, I'm pleased to be celebrating the Republican Party with you tonight. Yeah, there you are. I'm kind of the precursor to your meeting, which starts right at 7:30, so I appreciate y'all letting me be here. Laura, thank you very much for the invitation. We had a scheduling conflict. I was supposed to be here next month, but I'm scheduled to be in the Shenandoah Valley speaking to the folks out there, so I appreciate the opportunity coming here with you tonight. I want to share with you a little bit about me, a little bit about why I'm running and why I'm uniquely qualified to beat Mark Warner to become your next United States Senator. I graduated from the United States Air Force Academy, and from there I went to pilot training where I graduated near the top of my class. And some of y'all have seen this picture on the back of the Republican Creed that we'll be saying a little bit later on. That's a training plane that I flew. It's a supersonic training plane, but you know, there's something about being on the backside of a loop, screaming to the ground at 500 knots, getting ready to pull about 5.5 Gs with my G suit on, 15 feet away from the guy next to me. That just did not thrill me. Congressman, it might thrill others, but it does not thrill me. So even though I was fighter qualified, I flew the big KC-135, the big 4-engine aerial refueler. That's the guy that lowers the boom and the other plane comes up and does that aerial refueling. So therefore, while my professional job was to pass gas for a living. You know, I say that, and I flew over the battlefields of Iraq and the battlefields of Kuwait, and I didn't do that for the thrill of flying. I did that because I had a job to do. I did that because I had a duty. You see, I raised my right hand like many of you in this room, and I promised to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And that Constitution needs more defenders now than at any time in my life. Because Mark Warner's not doing that for us. Well, after flying all over the world and flying in top secret missions, I ended up being here at Andrews Air Force Base, where I flew during the Clinton era, and I flew congressional and VIP support. Now that was the Clinton error, which is ERROR, the Clinton error. So I've heard that somebody else was parking cars once with some senators. I guess they trusted him to park their car. It was nice that I had to trust the senators to actually fly them around this great country. So I'm pleased to have been able to do that. Now, my wife was in for 9 years. My wife and I were in for 9 years, and she was a 5-year cancer survivor at that point. You see, 5 years earlier, she had been diagnosed with a rare form of bone cancer. And to make that matter worse, she was pregnant with our second child at the time. And the doctor said, you have to terminate the pregnancy. You'll have more kids later. You know, it's one thing when you're pro-life, which I am. It's another thing when it lands in your lap. And we chose life. So 21 years later, my son is a medic. And he rides the ambulance, and he volunteers in Northern Virginia, and he brings life to an accident scene. You see the circle there? And if it's all right with you all, I'd like to introduce you to him. His name is Jake, and he's right over here. He's with me tonight. And I'm also pleased to tell you that on January 14th of this year, my wife and I celebrated our 25th wedding anniversary. Absolutely. She's unable to have more children naturally. She's unable because of the cancer, so we became foster parents. And in 1997, we received our license. You know how you sign up and it says, you know, come take the classes and get a license, and we did. And since 1997, for the next 16 years, we would take in one child at a time, or 2 or 3 if it was a sibling group. And we fostered 46 children in that time. And we adopted 4 of them. And because of our work as being foster parents, the governor appointed me to be on the Domestic Violence Task Force here in Virginia, a task force I remain on today. So because of Jake's volunteering, hold the applause, because of because of Jake's volunteering, because of our work as foster parents, my work on the Domestic Violence Task Force last year, in 2013, our family received the Outstanding Volunteer Family of the Year Award for the Commonwealth of Virginia. And I have a master's degree in finance. I'm a certified financial planner. I hold several licenses with the Securities and Exchange Commission. I hold a very interesting license conferred to me by the Commonwealth of Virginia, and that's a health insurance license that gives me an interesting insight to Obamacare. If we were going to hire a United States Senator this year, wouldn't we be looking for somebody who was an expert in insurance? Yeah. And probably somebody who had a master's degree in finance? Sure, I would think so. Now, why am I telling you this? Because our record is what is going to have to take to beat Mark Warner. So say this to me, answer this question. Say amen, say absolutely, say yes, say whatever you want to say if you agree with this, that if we hold Mark Warner to Mark Warner's record, we win. Yes. Yep, yeah, absolutely. Herein lies the problem. Here's the problem. Mark Warner knows that. He knows that. So he's going to come after my record, or he's going to come after Ed Gillespie's record. So we owe it upon ourselves to take a look at the caliber of candidate that we're going to be sending to the United States Senate. We have to. And one of the things we have to look at is the history and the record we bring to the table. So when Mark Warner looks at me, he's going to see I'm a decorated combat pilot. I've served in the forces which guard and keep our country free. I'm a life member of the VFW. And he's not going to run on that. He's going to see that I'm a small business owner. I've got a master's degree in finance, that I actually create jobs. And he's not going to run on that. He's going to see I've fostered 46 children. I've adopted 4. I'm on a domestic violence task force here in Virginia. I've written 2 financial planning books. One of them titled A Woman's Guide to Financial Planning. I wrote that for my mom. Unfortunately, she's passed away, and unfortunately, the book is out of print. Laura, I'm an out-of-print author, and it just kills me. But the important thing is Mark Warner's not going to run on that. But ladies and gentlemen, I need to tell you he's going to run on something about me. And you need to know it. Because in full disclosure, when you go to the convention and you cast your ballot, you need to be aware of this. And I've already talked to my wife. My son's already heard this. But I'm a believer in the Second Amendment. I'm a constitutional carry guy, and I'm packing. And Mark Warner's going to run on that. He's going to run on my belief in life, but I'm more concerned about the end of life right now under Obamacare than I am at the beginning. So now we have to ask ourselves this question: what's the record that Mr. Gillespie brings to the table? You know, I'd love to ask him that question, and I think that you, the good people of Virginia, should be asking that and should be seeing us in a debate. It was about a month ago that I was, It was about a month ago that I was at the Spotsylvania county meeting, mass meeting, and I asked Mr. Gillespie when we could have a debate. I mean, after all, George Allen had a debate with Jamie Ratke and the others. There were 14 debates and forums last year with the lieutenant governor candidates. And maybe somebody here will ask him tonight when I leave and when Mr. Gillespie shows up why he won't debate. I think it would be important for you all, those who are going to be delegates, to find out. I have a theory, and it's tough. It's a tough one. But here's my theory. Mr. Gillespie brings a lot of baggage to the table. We can talk about that, and I'll open up for questions in just a second. But he brings a lot of baggage to the table, and he does not want to be on record for it. And he knows, because maybe it's my combat pilot coming out, or maybe it's the fact that I'm willing to fight for you all, he knows that I'll challenge him to it. But shouldn't we know this here in Virginia? Absolutely. Yes, ma'am. So if somebody doesn't want to stand toe-to-toe with me, How in the world are they going to stand toe-to-toe with Mark Warner? How in the world is that person then going to go to Mitch McConnell in the United States Senate when Mitch McConnell says to them, I've got an unconstitutional tax increase I want to push on the American people? How's that person going to stand up and say no? Especially if that person advocated for an unconstitutional tax increase here in Virginia. And they did under House Bill 3202, which was unanimously thrown out by the Virginia Supreme Court. I mean, if you've already advocated for this twice, it's hard to go to the United States Senate and say, well, I'm going to start advocating for it at that point. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm not trying to be mean, I'm not trying to be tough, and I'm certainly not trying to say something when somebody's not here to be able to defend themselves, because it's my pleasure if they're here, but I need to honor y'all's chairman and vacate the premises by 7:30, because that was the request of the other side. So at that point, let me just let you think about that. It's not wrong. No, ma'am. It was the request of the other side.
I think it was a request of management from this group.
Well, then I'd be more than happy to see if management would change their mind, and I'd be more than happy to stay. But I don't want to get into this because it's important for us to answer questions. But you all need to know the character of the person who's standing in front of you. And then after I leave, you need to know who the character of the person standing in front of you at that point. Because, ladies and gentlemen, this isn't a game. We are at the point where Mark Warner is not doing what he promised us he would do. He looked right at the camera and told us he would not vote for a health care bill that would take away our plan. He looked right at the camera and he promised the people of Virginia he would not vote for a health care bill that took away our choice of a doctor. This is what he did. Well, we cannot stand for that because, you know, when you vote 97% with Harry Reid and President Obama, you are just one of their puppets. And ladies and gentlemen, Mark Warner is Harry Reid without the personality. And we can, yeah. And we can beat him. You know, Mark Warner doesn't have a lot to say, but he said that to the camera, and I'd like to say this to Mr. Warner. Mr. Warner, you have the right to remain silent. But you don't have the right to be our United States Senator. And to paraphrase another, if you want to keep your senator, you can keep him. But if you want to get rid of your senator, you can get rid of him, period. And I want to get rid of him and Harry Reid. So I appreciate that. I want to honor the time and the commitment I've been given by the management of this group. And let me make sure I leave and answer questions.
I just want to know, I don't understand this because I don't understand the management of this group. Who's the management of this group?
I don't know. I'd really rather just answer policy questions if you don't mind. I mean, I appreciate your question, but I want to honor everybody, and I want you all to ask Mr. Gillespie why, you know, just ask him. I'd be interested. Yes, ma'am, in the back, all the way in the back, all the way.
Yes, I'm just wondering, has any groups asked you all to do candidate forums? Any county parties or any women's groups?
Great.
Yep. They put on forums and invited them?
We had one forum, and it was 2 weeks ago, ladies, at the VFRW. Now, a forum certainly not a debate, but a forum is a forum where somebody answers a question and then somebody else.
Put forums on in North Carolina.
Right. We asked, our campaign has formally asked the Republican Party of Virginia for a debate. We formally asked other organizations for a debate as well, including GOP organizations and including Tea Party organizations and including non-affiliated organizations. And we haven't heard from the other camp.
I believe if there was party registration in this state and there was the candidates were chosen by a primary, one primary day, then perhaps it would be more conducive to a lot of candidate forums throughout the primary season.
Well, we certainly could have had one tonight, but and yes, ma'am, you had a question?
Yes. What is the history of House Bill 232? Most of these bill have districts.
Yes, ma'am.
Through changes and so forth.
Yeah.
You know the whole history of that bill.
Yeah, I may have said it wrong. It's House Bill 3202. So I may have said it wrong, and if I did, I apologize. But 3202. And the bottom line is that is the bill that created a non-elective taxing authority that would raise the taxes here in Virginia,
Creating a non-elected
a non-elected taxing authority.
taxing authority.
Yes, ma'am. Here in Virginia, it was on the 8 months that Mr. Gillespie was the Republican Party of Virginia chairman. He's all over record championing for this bill to go through. It went through, and it was then Bob Marshall sued. It was thrown out unanimously by the Virginia Supreme Court. Now, in all fairness, let's be full disclosure here. Some of our strong conservative stalwarts voted for that bill, like Mr. Ken Cuccinelli voted for it. Okay?
But he came out later and apologized.
Bingo. He came out later, apologized, said, you know what, I made a mistake, and he has reconciled his position on that. Perhaps somebody might want to ask, why 7 years later there hasn't been a reconciliation on it so far. But that's the history. Yes, ma'am. Did I see your hand, sir, or ma'am? Yes, ma'am.
He seemed like a nice man with a great family. Why do you want to go to Washington?
Yeah. Just for those that didn't hear in the back, she said, Shaq, you're a very attractive young man, and that you... That's not what you... Oh, that's what I heard. No, I'm just kidding. You seem like a nice man. Why are you getting into this? I'm getting into this because we're losing the American dream. Because we're losing our liberty. That's a capital L, liberty. And the three things we're fighting on is liberty, we're fighting for our veterans' rights, and we're fighting for our energy independence, which is a 10th Amendment right, by the way. So if the Commonwealth of Virginia wants to drill for coal down in coal country or off the shore, then it's the Commonwealth of Virginia's desire to do that. And the reason why is we're losing it. We're losing. When you say I've got a phone and a pen, we've got a problem. So the good Lord's blessed us. He's blessed our family with finance. He has not blessed the campaign with finance. Mr. Gillespie wins on the financial side. He wins. Darn it. But he wins. Oh, and by the way, for the record, just so you guys know, this is not about Ed the person. This is about Ed the record. Okay? Last year at the convention, how many people went to last year's convention? I'm just curious. Oh, excellent. And how many people are going to this year's? Wonderful, wonderful. Do you know who I sat next to last year at last year's convention? Ed Gillespie. I did. Now, it was 12 hours long, so we got up, moved, walked around, and stretched. But for at least an hour, I sat next to Ed, and right next to Ed was his wife, Kathy, and we talked. And you know what we talked about? The Senate race. We talked about me coming into it, because I hadn't. Back then it was May. I didn't get in until July, so I've been on the trail for 10 months. We passed 35,000 miles on the car, on my Prius. It throws everybody off because I've got a Choose Life license plate. And they're like, wait a minute, Choose Life and Prius. But I sat next to Ed, and I talked to him about my race, and he gave me his private cell phone number, which I have till this day. And he said, and I called him in July. I said, look, I'm going to be announcing. He called me back. Shaq, that's great. Called him in August, called him in September. And I asked Ed Gillespie if he would be my campaign finance chairman. Because he's got a skill. Let's hire him for the skill he brings to the table. But let's not hire him for a skill he doesn't bring to the table. So I asked him personally. By the way, I've asked him twice. But not since he announced. When he announced, he never answered, but when he announced, it was a de facto answer. I suspect so. Well, maybe I've got one more or no more.
One more? One more.
Illegal immigrants.
All right, somebody needs to ask Ed that same question. And what part of this? It's a complicated one, so do you want to narrow down the topic? Or
Just briefly, I feel the border has to be sealed.
Okay. Yeah, no question. If there's a leak in the ship, you plug the leak. Okay. So what we're doing in our campaign, and what we're going to do in the United States Senate, is make sure that we enforce the existing laws that are on the books. There's several issues here. One is, I have a very strong safety concern about illegals coming into our country. If you come in through the front door, Congressman, you know this, there's over a dozen immunization shots you have to take, including hepatitis, I mean, these are things that we've eradicated. Well, they have to take the mumps and the measles, and they're coming in without this protection. There's a pandemic potentially waiting to happen. I'm not trying to. So I'm very concerned about that. I'm very concerned about the Americans that are here today. We have a moral obligation to take care of legal Americans who are here today, and we're failing them. We're absolutely failing them. So instead, we have unemployment in certain sectors of our economy, certain sectors of our communities that are we're devastating because of this. I mean, we've got the STEM, the science, technology, engineering, math, and medical. We've got these students, we've got these graduates, they're here, and they're looking for jobs. And this is all part of that problem. So we are taking and by the way, no pathway to citizenship. Okay? This is going to be a big difference between me and Mr. Gillespie's stated position.
May I just add a footnote to that, Laura? May I add a footnote? I think it's important to realize, too, that when we have this illegal immigration, the children are required by law to be educated if they live here, and you're not allowed to look for proof of citizenship. I saw firsthand that we had people coming into a middle school situation who had no education at all. They're thrown into the program, the school's at loss for what do we do with them?
Right.
They're illiterate in their own language, they're illiterate in our language. It is a terrible mess.
Right. And
So
keeping
that's
and having the flow coming in is the problem. So I see my time is up. Ladies and gentlemen, I know that there are patriots in this room. And if we don't answer this one question, are you willing to fight for the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic? If we don't answer that question tonight, or next week, or next year, or 10 years from now, if we do not answer that question, then we've lost our country as we know it. I am willing to fight. I will stand up. I will be the standard bearer. And I will look Harry Reid in the eye. I will look Mitch McConnell in the eye. And I will say, the people of Virginia do not want this. I'm not supporting it because I'm supporting them. Thank you very much. Thank you, Laura. Okay, let me get out of here. So make sure you go to shackhill.com. For those at the convention, make sure you cast a ballot. I'd be appreciative of that. So, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. We have to talk later about why I did that.
We're now going to get on.
Thank you all. Congressman. Sorry. Thank you. It was great seeing you. Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate your service. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you. Nice to meet you. Yes, sir. Thank you for your service.
So I just wanted
Thank
to
you.
know.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much.
Who's your hostile crowd tonight?
No, they were fine.
Good luck. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Chance to be born and operated now. Taking all the factors and the liberty to a man is 40 miles